Okay, I think I am live now. Oh, hi everyone. Hi Beverly. Hola de nuevo, Adrian. Hi Debbie. Hi Chris. Hi James. Hi Joan. How are you guys doing? I'm just grabbing a quick drink. Hi Ty. How are you? Hi Jolene. Hi Kate. Hi Memphis. Paul. How are you doing? Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever time of the day it is. I do apologize. I look very disheveled. I've been literally walking around the city the whole day. This is the best I could manage. Please don't judge me. Hi, CE. Hi, Diana. Hi, Rebecca. How are you? Hi. Just as a forewarning, by the way, I've had to change the route because normally where we start this tour is impossible. The signal is terrible, and they are doing some construction sites with drilling and metal work, which actually is incredibly loud. So I'm gonna do a slight different start than what I normally do, just as a forewarning. Hi, Dean. Hi, Marianne. How are you doing? But that also means you guys get to see something that I don't think I've actually shown on a heygo tour before. So, there is that. Hello again, Rebecca. We need to go for that coffee. So just a small forewarning that the first half of the tour is not going to be exactly as expected, but the rest of the tour should be more or less the same. Good, because I got you covered now. Hey, Helen, welcome. How are you? But yeah, I'm just catching my breath. I mean, I know I look like an absolute mess. I'm perfectly aware. It's been a crazy day. It's been a really crazy day. Hello from Atlanta. How is it going in Atlanta? How is the weather like over there? Hi, Tish. Hello. How are you? Right. We got 2 minutes to go. Hi, Catherine. How are you doing? Welcome. Welcome to Southampton. And I'm just literally just taking a small seat before we get started so we can carry on with the day. Hot and sunny. That's fair enough. Well, I left home. Well, I don't know if you can see. This is actually a long sleeve t-shirt. It was supposed to be quite cold. Well, cold for Southampton in here today. So I left with a long sleeve t-shirt and a leather jacket because I'm not supposed to get back home until 7 or something like that when the sun's already gone down. And I thought, I'm going to be too cold. I'm literally melting. I'm melting. So even though I'm not in Atlanta, I feel you. Hi, Tammy. How are you? Hey, Tish. How is it hanging? Hi, Chris. Welcome. Welcome. Hi. Okay, we have 55 seconds to go. And actually, as we have literally just a few seconds to go, let me get up from my seat, my makeshift shift, because this is not really a place where I should be sitting. Hi, Margie. How are you doing? Welcome. And let's get centered in our new starting location. So if you've done this tour with me today before, it's probably going to look a little bit different, but I'll give a proper explanation about that in just a second. Hi, Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. How are you doing? Hope everyone is having a good Tuesday. Cool and sunny here in Lisle, Canada. I would love for a little bit of a breeze because normally this town is windy, but today is not that day. Hi, Diane. Welcome. How are you, Diane? Hope everything's going good. And we're literally just about to start. So here I go. Okay, and we're in the green. So hello, everybody. Welcome to Southampton. My name is Dr. Lilian Céspedes González, for those of you who don't know me. And for those of you who know me, just in case, please just call me Lily. Only my mom uses my full name when she's really upset with me. So, if you're upset with me, Lilian is fine. I'll get it. But I am a local historian and tour guide here in the south of England. And today I am going to show you this tour of the city center of Southampton that actually ties in the topics of prosperity and war. Now, as I was mentioning briefly before we started the tour, I've had to change our original tour start location because we have a fair few construction sites happening in there at the moment, and simply the signal there was just terrible and you wouldn't have been able to hear me. So what you're seeing today for the first few minutes is actually going to be very different from what everyone else that has done this tour has seen before. So this is the thing. So I'm gonna turn the camera around. I'm gonna show you these bits first, and then we're gonna work our way down to the high street again, so I can continue with the normal narrative of this tour. You know, sometimes these things happen, and it was a matter of either I had to cancel the tour or make up something on the spot, and I figured you guys would probably prefer me making up something on the spot. So this is my solution to the problem, and here it comes. Okay, well, welcome to Southampton. We are actually in the historical center of Southampton in a street that is normally dead, but of course, because I'm here filming, everyone is deciding to come down with the car. And this is called Hampton Street, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But the reason why I wanted to start the tour here instead is because this mural, in brief, summarizes the whole history of Southampton. It's only about 10 years old. It was just installed here in 2011, and I'll actually cross the road so you can see it a bit closer and explain you what it all actually means. But the reason why we're here in Hampton Street, hi May, how are you, is because Hampton is technically the original name for Southampton that we know of. Now here on this part of the mural, I don't know if you can see, in fact I will zoom in, there is actually a lot of names, and Hampton is one of them, but so is Hamwick, and so is Clausentum. That's because, as with any good medieval town, we couldn't just have one foundation story. We have far too many, and depending on which sources you check and who you ask, sometimes the town is called Hampton, sometimes the town is called Hamwick, sometimes it's on one side of the river, sometimes it's on the other side of the river. So, potentially, the reason why the town is eventually called Southampton is as an origin from the word Hampton, considering that in the UK we also have Northampton, which is farther up north than here. I'm just gonna zoom out and welcome Bev, Jim, Reverend Deed, and Terry. How are you doing? And that's okay. I'm actually quite used to pronouncing random names, so normally I go with what makes sense in my head. So I'm glad that I got it right. Now, like I said, this tells us the story of Southampton from a positive perspective, which is the reason why, as I had to amend the slide, start of the tour, I thought this would make sense. This literally tells us how Southampton became a place worthy to be. The ships that you see here at the beginning of the mural signify the Norman conquest of England. Southampton at the time was a very, very small town. We barely had 2,000 inhabitants, and in fact, we weren't even a town. But what made Southampton important was the port, which is the reason why there you can see, a little anchor, a coin with the face of the king, and eventually the bits that actually made us famous in England, which is our trade of wool and our trade of wine. That's the reason why in that 1, 2, 3, 4th panel, you have barrels and a sheep, because that's what we were famous for. That's the first bit of prosperity that this town experiences. Hi Denise, how are you doing? Welcome. As time goes on, Southampton develops, and as you can see, everything else in this mural has all to do with the shipping industry, because it is actually the port of Southampton that brings prosperity to the city, including the beautiful moment in time when we are able to send off the Titanic. I say beautiful moment in time because for the city it was a very momentous moment, even though it all ends up in tragedy. And that one over there in the middle is supposed to be the Titanic. Don't worry guys, I'm actually going to cross the street and be able to give you a better view of these panels one by one in just a moment, but I thought I would give you the full preview from here just now. Hi Sonia, how are you doing? Welcome. Now on this side of the actual panel, we have the most recent achievements and developments of Southampton. We have the sailing port, which actually brings a lot of money, and in case you didn't know, we're in the middle of celebrating our boat show, which is one of our biggest money-making festivals in town. We have the Spitfires during the Blitz, of which we will speak a bit more in a couple of moments, as we are gonna be passing through one of the most obvious evidence of war here in Southampton, which is Hoolyrood Church. Now, one of the reasons why Southampton was severely attacked was not just because of the prosperity that the actual port town brought, but because we had one of the most important Spitfire factories here. It wasn't actually in the city center, it was on the other side in Woolstone, which is the area where I'm gonna be taking you next week. But of course, the town got targeted for that as well. Hi, Beverly. Hi, Richard. How are you doing? Welcome to Southampton. Eventually, we managed to get even achievements in the area of football, which is the reason why you see that cup in there, 1976. That's for our local football team, the Saints, where I'm actually going to take you tomorrow. And the rest is, well, the modern history of the port that all has to do with the shipping industry of cargo and passenger cruise ships. Hi, Joe. Hi, Mike. How are you doing? Welcome. Well, let me cross so I can give you a better view of each individual panel and another little mural that is actually on the other side of this street so that we can all understand the city prosperity and work together. So, these are the Norman ships. This is the origin of Southampton as a medieval port. That coin is for King William the Conqueror, who starts giving us the rights to actually start importing and exporting wool and wine, which are the two main things that make this town important. Isn't it just cool, Diana? And it's on a side street. A lot of people miss it. Hi, Peggy. How are you? The town then prospers a little bit more, all thanks to ships, steamships, the ocean terminal, which is a very recent development, the Southampton Dock Company in the 19th century, and of course, the Southampton Museum, where we have all of our artifacts now. At the top of the mural, let me get there, we have the Southampton Walls, which you probably have seen in a different tour with me. The deer are actually there because of the New Forest. Now, although the New Forest is technically not in Southampton city centre, vast majority of the area of the New Forest is within the SO postcode and therefore falls under the jurisdiction of Southampton. That brings us a lot of money through, the farming of that land, but also through ecotourism. Hi, Fliss. Hi, Shannon. How are you doing? How are you doing, Tiffany? I don't think you've seen this. Oh, Rebecca, let me bring you, when we meet for coffee, I'll bring you here. And it's just absolutely lovely. This is our representation of the Titanic. We actually had a whole Lego made out of this in the City Museum recently. And of course, this is the coat of arms of Southampton with everything that matters in this town, which is boats, 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 and boats. Yes, we are a bit basic in that front. Hi, Takeshi, how are you doing? But at the end of the day, you know, if it's not broken, why fix it? These are some of our most important memorials, a couple of which we're gonna pass in just a moment, including Hoolyrood Church. Hi, Hadrian, welcome. This is our honorary mention to the Southampton Saints, the football team. And here is the Spitfire. I also think it's really cool that they've put in there that, 3 million servicewomen and men set out over D-Day. And everything else that comes from the rest of the panels is just the modern construction of the docks of Southampton, currently one of the most efficient container terminals in the UK, and cruise ship capital #1 of Europe, which is the reason why the end of the panel is all of these little ships that we have until the very end. Hi, Satyam, how are you doing? Welcome. So as you can see, this is the reason why the city prospers. So in a way, this is actually a pretty good introduction to the tour. I'll make a note that this work for the next one. And this is the actual plaque commemorating the build of the actual mural. As you can see, it was only installed here in 2011, but it had actually been in the works for a really, really, really long time. Thank you so much for the follow. Right. Now, I'm going to move us to another mural that is actually here at the end of this road, which is not as impressive, but, well, still worthwhile. It can be added to as history unfolds, 100%. Which is here on the side, still on Hampton Street, and that is a mural from 2013 trying to depiction what Southampton looks like now as a city. So this was actually done by Joanna Delwell, and she, if I remember correctly, she just took like ideas from everyone in town as to what this should represent, which is the reason why it's a bit more, sort of a mishmash of things, trying to bring those local voices. So it's really, really, really sort of community based And I'm just happy that they actually, brought that perspective into the city. So there you go. Much better than the original schedule. Well, I'm happy that that works for you, Memphis Paul. Hi, Pat. How are you doing? And yes, but what is also charming is the fact that both these murals are done with this mosaic technique. So, it keeps a little bit of integrity between the two of them. But I can guarantee you that unfortunately, a lot of people do also miss this mural. But as you can see in here, and I will sort of zoom into it, well, literally walk into it a bit more to tell you a few bits. And my finger is just gonna come into the screen, just making you aware. Hi, Celine. Hi, Teresa. Hi, DP. Okay, here comes the finger. So this is actually the clock tower of the museum and civic center. That big triangle is actually one of our new modern buildings where the head office for Carnival actually is, again, in relation to that very important connection we have to the cruise ships. Here we have a few more things. The city walls are obviously all of these bits that you see forming the tower there at the back. This big spire that you see there is gonna play into our story in literally just a few moments. And as you can see at the top, everything is cranes, ships, etc. Because once again, this is what brings prosperity to the city. It is the sea and that boating community, shipping industry, commercial outgoings that we really have developed and have allowed us to survive to become the town that we are now. Well, there is a few more things that contribute to this story, and that's what we're gonna see now in the high street. So, bear with me while we go back to the original setting of our tour. I'm taking you through the proper back streets of Southampton that no one gets to see because they are real ugly. So, I mean, I say that with love, I swear. But it's just because all of this area that you see here got obviously redeveloped during the Second World War. After the Second World War, a lot of this is, typical structures from the 70s and the 80s that don't look, particularly glamorous. And that is because, like I said, this is a tour of both prosperity and war. The war is super important because it changes the way Southampton thinks and Southampton behaves. For those of you who haven't traveled with me before, in Southampton we had 57 air raids during the Second World War, and a total of about 30,000 bombs dropped into this town, leaving us with barely any past whatsoever that we could share with people. So, that means that unfortunately a lot of ugly buildings were built afterwards because the city needed housing. It is the truth. So that's the reason why a lot of them just don't necessarily look at their best. They needed to go up, and they needed to go up quickly. Now, let me get to our main attraction here. I live near Southampton, and it does have some hidden gems though. Yes, it definitely does. And one of them is actually this lovely hotel that you guys see here. I mean, you're actually looking at one of the oldest buildings in the city, even though it may not look it. I will show you in a moment why it's actually one of the oldest. But this is actually a Grade 2 listed building. So for those of you that are not from the UK, I'll explain. A listed building is a building that either for cultural, historical, or architectural reasons must be preserved in the exact same condition than when it was added to this list. Well, you see those two huge bay windows at the front? Those are actually the two largest examples of bay windows from Georgian times, so the late 1700s, early 1800s, of the whole of the United Kingdom. And in any way, shape, or form, that shouldn't be here. It shouldn't have even survived the war, but yet they are. It's something that you probably expect to see in Bath, or in London, or in Edinburgh, and yet they are here in Southampton. And that's because the Dolphin Hotel is not just one of the oldest buildings in the city of Southampton, it's actually always been a hotel since the 1400s. And this hotel was able to grow and have literally this whole corner of the city for itself to the moment of becoming a 4-star hotel, thanks to something else that brought prosperity to Southampton, which is coaching tourism. Now, let me cross the road and tell you more about that. But just for the sake of sort of sparking your imagination, what you need to think about is that this whole street in here would have been full of hotels like the Dolphin back at the time, because this would have been the epicenter of the community. Well, I'm just crossing now so I can show you the back part of this hotel, and so you can see that it is truly a very old building. Hi Anita, how are you doing? Welcome to Southampton. Right, let's just get in there. And here we go. So, the way that we are coming through is the exact same way that horse carriages have done for literally 600 years, which is, pretty cool when you think about it. The structure of this building has not changed. The function of this building has not changed. It's been doing the exact same thing over and over and over for, well, now over 600 years. And here, as you can see, we have these beautiful wooden frames. Well, that is part of the oldest bit of the hotel. And let me give you a shot here a bit better from there we go. I can actually focus that better. So these timber frames are actually not the oldest part of the building, believe it or not. These are just from the 1600s. Inside the actual hotel, particularly in the top rooms, they still have medieval timber frames from the 1400s, exposed wood, which is absolutely stunning and beautiful. Hi Joyce, how are you doing? Welcome. Well, this part that you're looking at of this hotel is now still rooms, but back in the day they wouldn't have been. They would have been for the service, for the poor people, essentially. Because during coaching tourism, what would happen is that big carriages from London, from the Midlands, and sometimes from abroad would come to Southampton, and they would park, you see where the cars are? That has been the car park literally for 600 years. It's just back then there would have been horse stables and carriages, and they would have brought their luggage. All of these regal looks through these doorways into the main hotel, because Southampton at the time was considered a very big hotspot for the sea baths, which is essentially what 18th and 19th century society thought was good for the soul and for health. So if you came to the sea and you experienced the clean, supposedly, sea air, the waves, etc., that meant that your health improved, which apparently was preferable to the London smoke, etc. So that's the reason why we had a lot of national tourism coming to the coastline to experience these things. Now, on top of that, hi Kay, how are you doing? Welcome to Southampton. On top of that, for a really long time, at the end of the 18th century and 19th century, it was believed that Southampton had a miraculous hot spring in the area of Woolston, which is an absolute big fat lie, by the way. There is not such a thing in here. But it made money, and it made more tourists come down here. So of course it got exploited, and it created more passengers filling up those coaches and bringing them down south. Hi Carla, welcome. Well, as you can see, this other side of the hotel is completely different, and yes, you're still looking at the same hotel. This is generally how big it is. And as you can see, it transitions. If I sort of take a step back here, that part of the building that is now covered in white would have been the original redevelopment in the 18th century, in Georgian times. And then here we already have the later outer buildings in Victorian times. And then this one, which is very obviously now a modern reconstruction. Hi Marit, welcome. How are you? Well, what you probably don't know, unless you've traveled with me in our tour around the park, is that it is thanks to a man from Southampton called Richard Andrews that this coaching tourism really picks up and does the job for Southampton. Hi Emily, welcome to Southampton. Because Richard Andrews makes these horse carriages better, faster, more comfortable, with better cargo capacity, and changes the whole prospect for the city. Well, thanks to this very clever man, Southampton starts receiving not just a lot of passengers by sea, but also a lot of passengers by our roads. And businesses like this would have been crucial to the development of the city. Hi, Emily. Hi, Marit. Hi. Now, here, supposedly, we have 30 ghosts, if you believe in that, in this building, all of which are actually friendly ghosts. But, well, that's what the locals say. I've never seen them, so it's entirely up to you if you believe them or not. But the important thing that a lot of people know about this hotel, and that I really wanted to show with you, that shows why this hotel was so famous is because here, if we were to actually go through those double doors, which are now closed for a public function, is where Jane Austen celebrated her 18th birthday. And the reason why Jane came here to Southampton to celebrate her 18th birthday is because of one of her siblings. One of her brothers was actually quite severely sick. So like all of those tourists that I was telling you about, they brought him here to the actual, coastline, hoping that that the weather would improve his health. Now, what a lot of people didn't know back then is that because of the shipping industry, Southampton water, the Solent particularly, was completely polluted and, not clean at all. But hey, this this mattered. Well, here is the commemorative flag for Jane Austen and her birthday. Do you promote the ghost tours during Halloween time? Well, actually, DP, if you had traveled with me before, you would know that I'm not really good at ghost tours. I get scared very easily. And in fact, the last time I was out and about late in Southampton, some very strange things happened. If Adrian is still on the chat, can vouch for me that it was just a very bad combination of events. So I'm not the person to go for ghost tours. But there is actually some people around Southampton that does them, and they are very, very good. They have props and all sorts of things to make them even more interesting, kind of like what Stefan does. But I'm not the person to do ghost tours with. I mean, you would mostly be recording me being scared rather than actually learning anything at all. Right. Well, as a sign of prosperity and in relation to all of those ships that we saw in the mural, we have this huge anchor, which is actually one of the anchors from the Queen Elizabeth II cruise line, which is one of the most important cruise lines that have been helping this town grow and boom and develop connections all over the world for literally now about 60 years, because it's been going since 1982, I believe. So it's another momentum of our prosperity, our hard work at sea. Well, all of that hard work, unfortunately, made us a huge target during the Second World War, and this is something that is best seen with the building that I'm about to show you. I'll show you this one first, though. It's just a cafe now, but it's one of the very few buildings from sort of mid-20th century that remain in more or less good condition, because it sort of escaped the bombing, unlike this one over here, which is Hoolyrood Church. Now, as you can see, this church is very clearly missing some parts. And as we go inside of it, I will tell you more about it. I'm just trying to desperately go away because there is a wasp following me and I am terrified of wasps. So bear with me while I get rid of the wasp and look at the pretty ruin. There we go. Hi, Carla. How are you doing? Welcome. Well, first things first, we think there was actually a previous accident that probably helped destroy this ruin a lot quicker than expected, which is the fact that here there was a fire in the 19th century. This is one of the commemorative stones for the fire and the victims. And that probably affected the structural integrity of the church, so that when the bombings happened, it all came down in one go. Hey, how are you doing? So these were the people who actually tried to save the church and save the people who were actually inside. Now, from when we actually come out of the church, I will show you the clock and the quarter jacks a bit better, but for now we're gonna go in so I can actually show you this. Oh, don't worry, Carla, it's still one of the most beautiful parts of the tour, so you definitely have come at a momentous time. Hi, Milk. Hi, Vicky. How are you doing? Right, well, this is, as you can see, all that remains of the church. The story goes like this. Hoolyrood Church was actually put in here in the 14th century, to be precise, in 1321, to provide for a new water pipe that was actually coming from the sort of far end of Southampton. I'm going to take you to that area in my B-side tour of Southampton. And the church was just trusted to provide for the citizens with clean water. So this church was originally farther up in the high street, and they just moved it. That's the reason why it's called Hoolyrood. That's actually the Anglo-Saxon name for it. If it was built at the time, originally when it was built in the 14th century, it would have been called St. Cross. It's the exact same name. It's just, well, different applications of the language. By then, the Normans have already changed things for us. As you can see, they already have a few puppies in there. That's because currently it is under the protection of the merchant navy for anybody that has been lost at sea. So although you don't hold any type of services in here, they still come to commemorate those people, because some of them, don't actually have graves. But as you can see, the church itself would have been rather beautiful. Let me see if I can get an angle here past the barrier. There we go. So it would have been built in the brand new Gothic style, and it would have been actually one of the prettiest churches in town. Unfortunately, the Second World War decided that it wasn't gonna be so anymore. Right, I'm just gonna move the gimbal away. Bear with me for a moment while I actually take this out of the fence. Right, excellent. Well, it all actually happens in one air raid. The night is the 30th of November 1940. And it is all thanks to that spire that you see over there. Hi, Roland, welcome. How are you doing? Well, that is the spire of St. Michael's Church, which some of you may have seen with me in a different tour of Southampton. From the sky, that spire is very easy to see because it's done with Portland stone. Portland stone is an actual type of limestone that, although now is actually quite damaged by pollution, at the time it would have been very white and you would be able to see it very well from the sky. So the German Luftwaffe, the German Air Forces, actually used that spire to mark that this was the city center of Southampton. Of course, they didn't want to bomb that one, but this one didn't really escape. And if you kind of trace a line from the spire to here, you see exactly that is roughly the amount of time that it takes for a plane to turn around and start dropping bombs in here. Produce Portland cement from the limestone used today? Yes, 100%. Yeah. Hi Dave, I've just seen you coming. Sorry, you just sneaked in. So unfortunately, with the damage that had been done to the structure in the 19th century and the very sudden bomb attack, the church just didn't have a chance. It just collapsed. So since then, it is actually, like I said, under the care of the Merchant Navy, to keep the souls alive and the memory alive of those who have been lost at sea. And I mean literally anybody. As long as you are a person from Southampton and have a connection to the sea, you can be commemorated here. Thank you so much, Carla. You're very kind. Hello, Dave. Hi, Julia. How are you doing? No worries, Chris. Catch you at some other point. And as you can see, some of these are actually relatively recent, some others not so much. But we have 79, 78, the 80s already, etc., etc. So it's a really good job that they do at actually, providing for this space for the community, because, having received all of our prosperity from the sea, it's only fair that we keep those people alive in our memory. Just before it was all filled with drunks and not well, yeah, 100%. It is one of the problems we have. They actually look it up at night to avoid a lot of issues, because it used to be a big hangout spot. And thanks so much for the follow. Well, this is one of our brave soldiers from the First World War that we have commemorated in here. Captain Charles Argenon Fryatt, which was actually quite crucial, particularly in the operations in the area of Brussels. We have a commemoration here to the Falkland Islands and the war. As you can see, there is already been a wreath of poppies left in here. It has been here since July, because that's when the commemorations are. It's May to July 1982. So this would have been one of the recent memorials. Let me get you closer to that. And the poppy, as you can see, is actually not dedicated to anyone in particular. Thanks so much for the follow. It's just in general for all those victims. And we will start seeing a few more of these in the coming weeks, because we're approaching Memorial Day and Remembrance Day on the 11th of November. And I will do a tour about that when we get closer to the time. And finally, we have just an ordinary sailor from Southampton in 2003. So as you can see, you don't need to be, a big important name in the army or something like that. Just an ordinary sailor or fisherman from town can still be commemorated here. And the Merchant Navy would do a very good job at making sure all of these graves are actually taken care of. Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you. Well, of course, talking about prosperity and the sea, but also wars and catastrophes, one cannot ignore our link with the Titanic. And although I know I talk about this a lot more when we are in the other tour, this is our memorial fountain to the Titanic. It's gonna be hard to show you a picture without the mesh or the net getting in the way, but I'm sure you can all see there is a little carving of the Titanic in there. Well, they put the mesh in here to also provide a little bit more of structure to the actual tower because, well, it's actually in a relatively good condition. But what I really like showing you guys when we are here is this. This is actually essentially a box that talks to you. It was all done with the help of the Heritage Lottery Fund, and it just captures stories of the different people from the Titanic, either survivors or grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those survivors reading the stories. So I'm just gonna play the rescue button for a moment because I think it's quite shocking to actually hear someone who was a child at the time talking about how all of that happened to them. So we're just gonna play that for a few moments, and meantime I'm just gonna point the camera here. Okay, here we go.
When the dawn came up and we were being picked up by the Carpathia, I wasn't in the same lifeboat with her. I spent the rest of the night screaming for her. And I found her, of course, on the Carpathia. She was looking for me and I was looking for her. That must have been quite dreadful for people like my mother,
Hi, Chandra.
who would look round to see if my father had by any chance made it.
As they were come towards the dawn, more or less, the lights, the ships came in sight, saying, "There's a ship." I said, "There's two." It turned out that one was the ship and the other was the iceberg. They were on the side of each other. It was the Carpathia that came up to take us off. Well, our own lifeboats for that time were able to see the ones that were afloat, but were able to see any survivors around, and came and took us off. The 20 of us in the two different boats. And it took us to the Carpathia.
After we were picked up
Well, that carries on for a little bit longer, but as you can see, I think it's quite touching that they were able to do that. And well, this is the final memorial that the Merchant Navy have put in here to Charles Patridge. So, unfortunately, a very clear evidence of how the war tried to put down this town that had been working so hard to actually become a very prosperous city. But it doesn't end there. Southampton may have gotten completely turned to shreds, but this town, it may not be the nicest town now. It may not be the most comfortable or maybe the most approachable town. Let's face it, that the locals have a reputation for being a little bit aggressive, but there is a lot of trauma in here. So despite all of that, one thing people from Southampton have is a lot of resilience. We are resilient people in here, and we carried on. It is actually completely locked at night. They normally lock it at about 8 o'clock, Carla. Now, just so you can see from the side, that's a bit clearer image of the Church of St. Michael that caused the bomb to drop here in Hoolyrood. And I'm going to cross over to the other road just so you can get a better view of the church we've just passed. And so we can move to the end of this road as a continuation of the tour and further notes on prosperity, because I don't like ending tours on bad notes. So I'm not gonna leave you with all of this destruction, death and misery. That would be very uncharacteristic for me. So before we move on, let me give you this one shot. Hey Lynn, how are you doing? Welcome. Now, unfortunately, and although the Merchant Navy do a very good job at keeping the structure alive, the one thing that don't work and haven't worked for a long time is the clock and the quarter jacks. But everything else, to be fair, is surveyed every 3 or 4 months, more or less. So they do a good job at keeping it alive. Right. Well, moving on. So, the city gets completely turned to shreds. 30,000 bombs falling here. Most places would have packed up and gone home. Southampton had other plans. We literally launched ourselves into this manic, and I mean manic, way of building things. I mean, look at some of these buildings. They are, I don't even know how we can consider them either businesses or housing, but they had to do it. So they just invest so many resources at trying to make them actually, come back afloat. And the few buildings that actually remain and that survived the war receive a lot of restoration. I used to work on the job center too, Carla, so we're twins. Now, these three buildings have actually received a lot of restoration from the city. This one is the Red Lion Inn. It actually used to be the oldest inn in Southampton. It's been here since the 12th century, but the bombs destroyed the vast majority of it. And what you see is a very good attempt at trying to keep the more recent 1600s exterior, up to scratch. It's the same here with Bailiff Kitchen. This type of tile work, I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see it. There is no type of tile work like this anywhere else in Southampton. It is also a Grade 2 listed building, and the owners of the restaurant do actually as well a very good job at trying to keep the restaurant providing for the exterior. But you can see particularly, you see on this side of the wall where everything is cracked, those are the bits that unfortunately suffer from the impact of the bombs. And finally, the one that we're passing by here on the left, that used to be Southampton's post office from the very end of the 19th century. And I mean, I would lie to you if I didn't tell you that this is mostly heavily restored towards the end of the 20th century. It's a beautiful building, but most of it is no longer, 19th century. So I would lie if I really told you this is a 19th century build, because it's not anymore. Well, we're now gonna walk down to the waterfront so I can finish in a quite much nicer